I bid you welcome.
I welcome you to my house.
Welcome to my house.
Welcome to my home.
Hello Horror Hounds, welcome to my horror house. This time round I want to talk about season 1 of Chucky, which I got a few days ago and watched over the last couple of nights. Completed it last night. And broadly overall I'm quite happy with it. It kept me entertained with some caveats. I've seen some people online like it. I've seen some people online really dislike it and go against it. It does seem to... What struck me about fans of the Child's Play series... I'm going to come up with a tortuous analogy here, but I'm a fan of the band Ghost, but this can apply, I imagine, to many different bands and fans of bands. You get some fans who got into them in the early days and just loved the first album or the first couple of albums, and then if a band sort of develops its sound or changes its direction, it brings new fans on board, and they love all of that stuff. And some of the old fans can really rail against the new direction and the new sound. There's Ghost is springing to mind at the moment because they're on tour and they've just released an album. So there's a lot of chatter online about Ghost, and a lot of that is a lot of hate being piled onto the band, not just from people who have never liked the band, but from people who loved the band in their earlier iteration and just want them to go back to that. And Child's Play seems to be very similar. There are some very die-hard fans of the first two, maybe the first three movies, that just want Chucky to be a slasher killer, just old school, hack and slash. Please, can we just get back to that? And really, that horse bolted after Bride of Chucky. At the time, to my mind, when Bride of Chucky was released, there was the horror landscape at that time was not fit for just ploughing the same furrow and doing more of the same. So the Child's Play series sort of, or at least Don Mancini, felt that it had to become self-referential. It had to become a little lighter, a little wackier. The needle went much further along that direction of the scale with Seed of Chucky, which I didn't watch because I had heard so many bad things about it. In fact, I didn't come round to watching it until Curse of Chucky came out, and people were saying that it was a bit of a return to form and a return back to the basics of the Child's Play series. So I happily got myself back on board and watched Seed of Chucky, knowing it wasn't the last ever Child's Play we were going to get, and after that there was going to be one that's a little bit more serious. So I thoroughly enjoyed the craziness, knowing it was going to get dialed back a little. Then Cult of Chucky came out and it dialed the craziness up a little more and in a slightly different direction. And it seems to be that for most of its time now, the franchise has been walking a tightrope between horror and silly. There's no way of getting the genie back in the bottle of just having a scary doll movie. Everyone knows who Chucky is now. Everyone watching knows it's Charles Lee Ray and that he's a killer. No, you can't pace out a version of Child's Play now which is waiting to see when the doll is going to move, or if it's going to speak, or if it's going to do anything. And I think on the whole, Chucky season 1 is pretty damn good at walking that tightrope. I mean, hell, it's bloody enough, certainly. I think there are people who would have liked a lot more gore and a lot less of the teenage drama. I can kind of sympathise with that, I guess. I know there are people who think that the series went too woke. Don't give a shit about any of that. That's just laughable. We're just gonna park that criticism off to one side. Anyone who uses woke as a pejorative, just all I hear is white noise. I don't care about any of that. I think the balance between kills and the wackiness of the franchise, especially in the second half of the series, I think was probably just about right. One of the things I really appreciate about season 1 of Chucky, and all of the iterations of the Child's Play series after sort of Bride and Seed, is that they don't throw out the continuity, no matter how bizarre that continuity is. I think even Glenn Glenda gets mentioned in later installments. I'm actually quite desperate for them to make a return. I think Don Mancini should maybe double down on that and bring Glenn Glenda back. However, that's just me. I think they're a fantastic character. And the world of Chucky now is insanely convoluted. The lore is a little Gordian knot. And I love the fact that Don Mancini will now run with it and expand upon it rather than get embarrassed by it and try and retcon any of it away. That's me. I love continuity. I love continuity porn. And the first half of the series kind of played peekaboo with that, and then the second half of the series went all in, and I must admit I preferred the second half when Jennifer Tilly turns up, Tiffany turns up, Nika from Curse and Cult turn up, and we don't step back from any of the stuff that's been established in previous installments. Certainly Cult of Chucky for me ended on a big cliffhanger with Nika getting possessed by Charles Lee Ray, and also the fact that he can now splinter his soul and possess multiple Chucky dolls. None of that's rowed back, and I love that. We get more flashbacks to Charles Lee Ray and Tiffany, which is building upon some of the flashback stuff we learnt in Curse of Chucky, and I'm down basically with all of that. I wonder whether watching it all in a couple of blasts maybe worked to the detriment of the show, because it might have held my attention more if I watched it for weekly episodes, because there were times when I was sort of zoning out a little bit and then my interest coming back in again. My main concern for season 1 of Chucky is if I decide to do a big marathon of the Child's Play series, I want to include Chucky. And that's a good few hours now of television. It's a solid commitment, and I do wonder whether I might feel upon future rewatches the urge to fast forward through, to speed through some of the sections just to get to the bits where things move forward a little. I guess the only in sort of the horror landscape, the only similar thing that springs to mind is the Ash versus Evil Dead proposition, the Evil Dead TV series. And that runs at such a fast pace that I actually, and it's much more episodic, I really see no issue in going back and rewatching all of the Evil Dead movies and then jumping straight into that TV series. I think that helps by having episodes of only half an hour long, which I know some eyebrows were raised across the Atlantic about that runtime. Over here in the UK, we're perfectly used to half-hour episodes of television, and I think that sort of pacier, more episodic TV is really going to help Ash versus Evil Dead repeat viewing wise. That I don't think Chucky, certainly season 1 of Chucky, will benefit from. I've seen lots of negative opinions raised against the acting and specifically the lead. I've seen all over the place people not liking the fact that he looks as though he's always on the verge of tears. Never really bothered me. Makes absolutely perfect sense for his character when you consider everything that he's been through, everything that he endures through the TV series. Christ, I dare anyone not to be on the verge of tears. Anyway, when it calls, he's a miserable kid who is thoroughly depressed and is set and primed to be coerced, groomed by Chucky into a killer. So he's not going to have too many light and cheery moments. There are moments of light, brief though they are, and the actor pulls that off, and there's moments of anger, especially in the final episode, and he pulls that off. That I wasn't bothered with that. I do think the acting of the younger leads is maybe a little stage schooly at times, a little bit patchy compared to, especially when you see Jennifer Tilly and the adults breezing Lexa Doig and the like. but especially when Jennifer Tilly breezes in like an absolute queen and just bosses everything, the energy levels rise. But there's no way around if you're going to set your show around 14, 15-year-old kids, and I believe the kids who were acting around about that age at the time, you know, it's a variable feast, and some of them rise to the challenge more often than others do. It's not a deal breaker for me. It didn't put me off. I wasn't. I didn't feel sort of any inclination to recoil or rage quit or anything like that. I'm not quite sure why people have had such visceral negative reactions to a show which does essentially, well, in some cases the reasons are blatant and obvious, and we don't need to say what they are out loud here, but a show that gives you quite a lot of Chucky, Brad Dourif doing his stuff, a fair amount of decent kills. I mean, the thing can't be an absolute bloodbath, otherwise everyone would be in jail as a suspect. So certainly an element of tightrope walking. I think the finale, the sequel bait of the finale, didn't bring the whole series home to me. A little in the same way that the sequel bait ending of Cult of Chucky made me go, what the actual F? But then there's nothing. You have to wait years and years for the next product, and you don't even know if that's going to follow on canonically. Luckily, it does. Don Mancini seems to continue to want to honour the canon, which is fine. But now we have another sort of sequel bait ending, and I know that there's going to be a season 2 announced, but I just do wonder whether we're going to go through another cycle of 8 episodes and then have another sequel bait ending. I think the promise of a truck load of possessed Chucky dolls being a holdover for series 2 rather than paying off in the finale of series 1 is a little thin for me. I feel a teeny weeny bit shortchanged with the final episode, but overall thoroughly enjoyed it, really. Laughed out loud quite a few times. Chucky going trick-or-treating in a Hello Kitty mask, absolutely brilliant. There's enough there that I really liked. Nothing there that really enraged me, and I'm kind of slightly bemused by the rage it is engendered in some quarters. But as I say, as a Ghost fan, it's something I'm kind of used to seeing and reading online, and after a while, it just becomes background noise that washes over you. I'm sorry, some people really took against this series. I thought it was perfectly fine. Hello Horror Hounds, welcome to my horror house. This time round,